President Trump is continuing to make massive changes to immigration policies, including halting refugee arrivals, fast-tracking deportations, sending military troops to the southern border, lifting long-time rules restricting immigration enforcement near schools, churches, and hospitals, and also ordering federal prosecutors to investigate state or local officials who they believe are interfering with his crackdown on illegal immigration. I wanted to share this social media post from the DEA of Rocky Mountain saying that the DEA and federal local partners had conducted an early morning operation at a makeshift nightclub in Adams County. They say drugs, weapons, cash were seized, and about 50 migrants were taken into custody, many connected with one of the gangs from Venezuela. I also wanted to share this social media post right here from the DEA in Chicago, and right in the middle, that is Border Czar Tom Homan. It says the DEA, along with our Justice Department partners, is assisting DHS, Gov, and other federal law enforcement partners with their immigration enforcement efforts. Now, Border Czar Tom Homan warned that daily deportation numbers, they are set to rise in the coming weeks as President Trump's administration begins to expand its operations. On Friday, ICE made 593 arrests. On Thursday, 538 arrests. U.S. military planes carrying migrants have also landed in Central America as a start to deportations. Meanwhile, lawmakers in Democratic-led states are proposing new measures that could implement legal obstacles for federal immigration officials and help immigrants lacking legal status avoid deportation. To speak more on this, I do want to bring in Michelle Saenz Rodriguez, who is an immigration attorney. And Michelle, we appreciate you joining us here on Live Now from Fox on this Sunday.
Thanks for having me.
When we take a look at the legal process when it comes to deporting immigrants, what does that legal process look like as we see those numbers continue to increase when it comes to deporting individuals? Legally, what is that process? Can you walk us through that?
Sure. So once someone is detained by ICE, just because they are detained, that doesn't necessarily mean it's automatic deportation. Everyone who is detained will have a right to talk to an attorney of their own choosing. They're not given an attorney as they would be in a criminal proceeding, but they have the right to hire a lawyer, have their case reviewed, and go before an immigration court. And as we've heard, the immigration courts are really backed up right now. There's about 3.5 million cases sitting in immigration courts right now waiting to be heard. So
Michelle, let me jump in here. So even if you are detained, there is a lengthy process to be deported. It's not like these individuals are then just immediately deported to other countries. They have to go through that court process.
That's correct. Unless you have an outstanding order of deportation or under one of the executive orders, if you have been here less than 2 years, then you can be subject to one of the processes that we call expedited removal. And those people that qualify for expedited removal can then be deported without a court process.
Let's talk about criminal activity. President Trump saying that they're predominantly and primarily focusing on criminals, individuals who are involved in illegal activity. If they determine that to be the case, do they still go through the court process, or is that under, that purview of immediate deportation?
It would depend on where you are, but most criminal aliens already have been through the deportation process or would not qualify to go before an immigration court. And actually criminal alien deportation, that has always been the priority for ICE even before this administration. So those that are out there that have deportations that are criminal aliens, those should be the top of the list. And as they come into the custody of ICE, should be deported.
You know, there's been a lot of discussion about President Trump expanding ICE's ability to perhaps go into locations like hospitals and schools and churches. But from what we are hearing, the primary focus not on children, not on nonviolent offenders or immigrants. This is predominantly getting criminals out of the country first and foremost.
Well, it should be. I mean, that was what the message was initially, that it was going to focus on approximately 680,000 criminals that were going to be the top priority. However, what we've seen in the first few days has really been a lot of chaos and what we call collateral damage, for lack of a better term. But communities are scared. So a lot of people are getting caught up in the raids. And we saw in Newark just the other day, a U.S. citizen, a veteran, was caught up in one of the raids in a restaurant. And so we will see all different kinds of people getting caught up in this chaotic system until we have an orderly way to do things.
There's been a lot of pushback from perhaps more liberal-leaning cities and states. 22 states now have filed a lawsuit against, President Trump. A federal judge in Seattle temporarily blocking the path to citizenship or right to citizenship. When we're talking about federal versus state, federal versus local, which goes first? What is that order when you're having the president signing an executive order and you have pushback from states saying we are not going to go along with this legally? What is that process?
Well, number one, immigration has always been in the purview of the federal government. States have never had the authority to do immigration law, because it is the federal government's job to manage the immigration system in this country. Executive orders are just that. They are executive orders. So what we are seeing is the pushback from the states saying, it's not my job, it's your job to execute immigration law in this country. And so that is where the rub has happened between the states, the localities, and of course the federal government. And I think what has happened is that President Trump has said, this is my agenda, but you cannot rule by executive order. There's nothing behind those orders. There's no money behind those orders. There's no laws behind those orders. It is his agenda to Congress, go and make this happen. And until Congress gets to work, there's going to continue to be this pushback between the states, local governments, and the federal government.
We've seen this fast and furious ramp up of detentions and the deportation process. You were calling it chaotic. When you take a look at everything that is going on from that legal standpoint, where do you see the challenges?
Well, I think there's going to be challenges at every moment. I mean, initially we saw the birthright citizenship, basically simultaneously the lawsuit came out. And so from the advocacy standpoint, what we see in the advocate community is that everything that happens from the advocate perspective is going to have an answer. And what that's going to lead to is going to lead to gridlock, is going to lead to a lot of litigation and a lot of confusion. And so, again, I think it comes down to the president putting his agenda out through executive order and asking Congress to do their job.
And what we've seen in the past number of years is, as you mentioned, the court system overwhelmed, the waiting list. Some of these immigrants are waiting months. They are here in the United States, but they don't have a court date scheduled for months as they are staying here. And as you mentioned, it's really up to Congress to pass those rules. I would imagine that perhaps that is something that they're going to be addressing. But from that legal standpoint, as an attorney, I would have to imagine you see firsthand just how overtaxed and overburdened the court system is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The immigration courts need more funding. The Department of Homeland Security needs more funding. In order to make this system work, really the money needs to go into making it work more efficiently so that cases can be heard, and people who have cases can go before their judge and get their cases heard and have their day in court, which we haven't been able to have really for many, many years.
Legally, as you take a look at this, is there anything that you're keeping a particularly close eye on when it comes to this ever evolving situation? Is there a particular issue or area from that legal standpoint that you're very interested in seeing how that all unfolds?
Well, what from the advocacy standpoint, I mean, what we want to make sure that is preserved is due process, because what scares us is people like the dreamers and people that have lawful status getting that status taken away from them. Because the focus has always been we have to find a way to keep the people that bring good things to this country. Immigrants have always contributed to this country, and there has to be a way to make this work for the people that we need that bring quality, good things to our country. And immigrants have always contributed to this community.
The federal judge temporarily blocking, the birthright citizenship. Do you see that this could go all the way to the Supreme Court? The judge calling that executive order unconstitutional. Is that the path where you see this going?
He was pretty clear very quickly on his opinion that it was unconstitutional. This is very settled law. Obviously, it goes back more than 100 years. It's very well settled in the Constitution. My guess is it will continue to go up in the courts, and we'll see ultimately where it ends up. But it could end up before the Supreme Court as a very big question for all of us.
And no doubt a lot more developments to come. Michelle, we appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thank you so much.